Hello and welcome to the group today. Please keep in mind, for those of you who are here live, that we'll be recording the first portion of this group. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. Otherwise, we can save them for the second part of the group where we discuss the rest of this. Today, we're going to be talking about how to fight in front of your kids. Just a quick note. That we ask everyone to remember that parent education is not one size fits all. What you're about to hear is meant to be integrated with your own personal values and beliefs as a caregiver. At Camry, we offer individual caregiver support sessions so that you can take what you've learned through any of our in-person, online, and recorded groups and make it individualized to your own family. So fighting in our kids. We fully understand that it's impossible to agree all the time, and it's wrong to pretend that we do. But frequent unresolved fighting chips away at a child's confidence, triggering sadness, anxiety, and fear in children of all ages. So what do we do? Where's the middle ground? Anger does have an upside. Kids need to know that all anger is normal. And it's a legitimate emotion. It's what we do when we act upon that anger that we sometimes need to work on. If all fights were to happen behind closed doors, or you tell them we're not fighting, children won't learn to trust their perceptions. So we want to make sure that they understand that people do in fact argue, and that's okay. So the negative effects of long-term exposure to fighting and arguing effects can vary based on the frequency of the fighting, the severity of the argument, the child's temperament, and the child's perception of safety. Behavioral effects on young children can include sleep problems, tantrums, and mimicking the communication skills that are modeled to them, like screaming. How do you know if you fight in a problematic way with your partner or with someone else that's in the home or another primary caregiver? So in the AHA Parenting website, one of the experiments that was suggested was to take a chunk of days, maybe a week, and just look at your interactions with your partner through your child's eyes. So you may understand it differently, but try to take the perspective of your child and how they may see your interactions. And we want to ask ourselves things like, does the tone stay respectful even when you're disagreeing? Do voices stay at a relatively calm level? Do you both find a way to express your wants and needs without attacking each other? And is the tone in your home generally one of warmth and support? Does your child see daily ample evidence of emotional generosity on both sides? And do you make a point of making up in front of your child if there is some sort of argument? And are there at least 5 positive interactions for every negative interaction? So it's not saying to not argue or to not have negative interactions, but we just want to make sure that that's being balanced. And that there are more positive interactions than there are negative ones. So what do we tell them? Details of the fight are not necessary. We don't want them to get involved in the content of the fight or worry or take that on. You can say something like, we got angry at each other, but we talked about it and we figured it out, and that's enough. And let them know that it wasn't their fault. In order to lower our anger ceilings, we can dial down the tension by taking a break. You can take notes so that you can continue later on. You can use I statements. Don't force your kids to referee. Do not get them in the middle of your fights. And don't try to win. And also be sensitive to signs of stress with your child. Things like withdrawal, acting out, headaches, stomach aches, overeating. How to fight respectfully. So according to Judy Arnall, who was the author that wrote about a lot of this material, arguing in front of children is important because you need to model how to argue and disagree in a respectful and healthy way. This then influences how children model future relationships. She also suggests some do's and don'ts of arguing. We're going to go through here. Some of the do's are to take an adult timeout and press the pause button. I am a huge fan of this one. I use this one in my own relationship quite a bit when my husband and I disagree. And we've been together almost 15 years now. And I would say earlier on in our relationship, we didn't know how to argue. We certainly didn't know how to do it respectfully. And this idea of the pause button came up and we decided to try it out because I would want to talk about it and he just needed some time to think about it. And so as long as I knew that we were coming back to the argument or coming back to the disagreement at some point, I was comfortable stepping away. And so if he needed to press pause, and sometimes it was me pressing pause, he would literally just say pause, and I would know that the discussion had to stop. And we had a rule, it's a very long amount of time. Some people do a couple hours. For us, it was 2 weeks. So if it was a really heated argument, he would have 2 weeks to come back to it, and he would have to be the one who came back to the discussion and said to me, okay, I'm ready to talk about it now. And if it was more than 2 weeks, or we hit the 2-week mark, then I was allowed to go back to him and say, okay, time's up, we need to have this discussion. So I'm a huge fan of this one. Another do is using I statements, which I'll go into a little bit, in a tiny bit more detail in the next slide. Trying to solve that specific problem. So if you're in the middle of a disagreement, try to just solve the one specific problem rather than trying to bring up other problems or other discussions and arguments, or bringing in personal things or saying, you always do this, you never do that. That's not really going to get you anywhere. So trying to just solve the one specific problem at hand is a lot easier. And then be sure to make up and show your child how you reach a resolution. So how you come to a solution from the argument, but also how you repaired the relationship if needed. And that can be done through apologizing and doing that in front of your child, not waiting for them to go to bed or leave before you guys finally make up. The don'ts, using sarcasm, swearing, putting your partner down, using physical aggression. Those are sort of our big don'ts that we don't want to have in fights and arguments. So I statements in a little more detail. If you're not familiar with I statements, it's the general, I feel blank when you blank, because blank, I would like blank. And that last part doesn't always have to be in there. So an example that I've given here is, I feel hurt when you ignore me because it seems like I don't matter to you. I would like if we can make an effort to talk and connect at least once a day. So as you can see, these can be really quick, brief. You don't need to talk a lot. And I think that's what happens is sometimes we get so stuck on trying to over-explain ourselves. And so if you can communicate in a way that uses these I statements where you're talking about your own feelings, and yes, you can talk about how the other person influenced your feelings, but the core there and the first thing you're saying is your feeling. And then we're leading with that. And then we're also saying the because, when your actions are this, this is how I interpret them. And then that last part is really helpful, where you could say what you would like to happen instead. And that usually helps your partner figure out what to do better the next time. So how does your child see the argument? With babies and toddlers, they're attuned to raised voices and yelling, even if it's just a discussion and not a fight, they're going to notice it. So be sure to slow down, lower your voice, and give them a hug for reassurance. With preschoolers, they might think that they caused the fight. So they believe that they're the center of the universe. So you have to let them know that the fight is not their fault. And with school-age children, they'll sometimes assume the worst and that you're heading toward divorce if arguments go unresolved. So acknowledge the dispute happened and report the resolution. Let them know that it's okay now, if that's possible. What if the argument gets out of hand? So sometimes things can get out of hand when our anger gets the best of us. It's inevitable, it happens to the best of us. Remember that it's just as important what you do after the fight as the fight or argument itself. It's helpful if your child can see you apologize and acknowledge what you did wrong in the argument. Whether it's with my husband or with my children, I lose my temper, I'm human. And I find that I often will walk away from the situation feeling really guilty. And I just have to remember to go back and actually apologize and say what I did wrong. I raised my voice, I shouldn't have yelled. I'm sorry that I lost my cool. And I think that's equally as important as trying in the moment to stay calm, because we all lose it a little sometimes. So it's important to at least have the ability to go back and apologize. If it's getting really intense, you need to consider couples or family therapy. The intent of therapy is often to improve communication skills and have a better relationship with your partner, but it also can be a place where you decide if ending the relationship is healthier for your family. And so it's time where you can work on that relationship in a couples counseling setting. In a family counseling setting, you could do just therapy for your child if they seem particularly affected by watching frequent arguments. Even if you and your partner are no longer together, children can still be reactive, especially in those situations where parents are separated or divorced. And then you could do family counseling as well. If children have learned from previous behaviors and you find they're getting involved in the fights or as they're getting older, it could be something that the family is doing together and learning how to communicate and resolve problems. So some final thoughts is just that our organization, is here to help families. We do not provide couples counseling, but we do have programs available for families who live in Burnaby and New Westminster, and they're completely free of charge. Our counseling program offers child and family counseling for school-age children, and our early years parent support program offers individual parent support for caregivers who are expecting or who have children 0 to 5 years old. And so I've got the email addresses and phone number up there. And if you're interested in getting more information on this topic or something else, please feel free to email or give us a call and see if we can help you out. Thanks so much for joining us today.